sir. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the morning and had some good kickoff to Tech Ed and some good sessions so far. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. This wide room makes it tough here. Either get the screen or to see me. I'm sorry for you in the middle that are seeing me rather than the screen, so please focus over there to see what's up on screen. Also, welcome to all of you on the live feed. We'll be taking questions as we go throughout, so if there are questions, please don't hesitate to jump in online and ask those questions. To all of you in the room, thanks for joining. Same thing with questions. I'll leave some time at the end so we can happily answer any questions you have about what we have today and things that we're working on here in the future. To kick it off, my name is Andy Stump. I am a business manager throughout this week to learn more about the specifics. This is a general overview. I'm going to go just one little bit layer deeper, but if you go visit many of our product managers and other experts within the space, they'll take that next layer deeper on the details for that. So let's get started. When we look at the overall software space and that design portfolio, it's really about the overall system ecosystem. And we know at Rockwell, from the very early design until that back end, supporting, maintaining, and updating that system, that's a long life cycle. We're talking 20, 30 years. And many of the things you do during that design stage, while a very typically short part of that process, is what sets the stage for what you have to maintain for the life of that system. We also know that the Rockwell Automation tool set is not the only set of tools in engineering that you use to build those systems. So our strategy, and very importantly, is to be able to interconnect and connect to those other engineering tools and bring that data in. Tools like P&IDs and CAD tools, simulation, operator trainings, modeling software are all important parts of that design and build process. On that right-hand side, you're bringing that into Studio 5000. It's really around the system tool set, which we'll talk about with Studio 5000 Architect. The tools for the control and visualization, Logix Designer, View Designer, and then the system tool set and library management that complement that for overall productivity within that tool set. So that's how we'll walk through the update today with those product breakdowns. So let's start off with the system design. The overall space with how do you define your system, define all the devices in that system, bring all of those multi-controllers, that HMI, together in one space. That tool within the Studio 5000 suite is the Studio 5000 Architect toolset. It's the one place where you can define all those controllers, visualization, drives, and switches in that project in one place. It gives you one place to go to configure and set up that system. Over the past release, released in February and March of this year with the new Studio 5000 Architect, we spent some time focusing on three areas. We spent time focusing the modern UI and look of the product. You're going to see that aligned across Logix Designer, View Designer, and Studio 5000 Architect. More common workflows, common look and feel across that product. We spent time adding new devices into that product to continue to build out the amount of products and supported capabilities. But I want to focus a minute on that middle one here. This kind of goes back to that system ecosystem. How do we better exchange data with those third-party tools? One of the new capabilities added in this most current release is we've adopted Automation ML as the standard data exchange interface to the Rockwell Automation system. You're first seeing this in Studio 5000 Architect to be able to exchange electrical CAD data directly with the Studio 5000 suite. One of our great partners, ePlan, is also likewise adopting the Automation ML standard, and will be able to natively exchange back and forth the electrical CAD data with Studio 5000 Architect. Now, we're also building out a set of adapters. So later this year, you'll see a release of some new connectors to products like AutoCAD Electrical, being able to exchange data with those tool sets. We hear very loud and clear from our users a lot of value in keeping those prints up to date, accelerating that design process by bringing that data in. So that's a very important step. You're going to continue to see that evolve, more robust data exchange, and that introduced into other products over time. As we move into control design. Here we're talking about building out the code that's in your controller, the logics and the micrologics families of controllers. Listed set of sessions to go through, many labs and overviews for these products throughout this week. But the primary project we walk through here is really around Studio 5000 Logix Designer. I'm sure many or all of you are familiar with that product. And we're going to walk through some of the details of what's new in the version 31 release that was introduced in February of this year. First and foremost, we spent quite a bit of time in this release, once again focused on that look and feel of the product. Thinner menus, tab views, some updates to the editors, new improved workflows to take advantage in a common engineering environment that you expect when you're sitting down at your desk working for many hours within that product. We broke everything apart and brought it back together as tab views. And this is really important because as you're working, code is not just simply one routine or one set of tags. You know, if you're writing good modular code, you're breaking it apart. And you want to have access to all of those different parts and then be able to manage that more easily in your environment. So an important part of that is moving everything to tabs, tags, trends, code into those tab views. And what that's going to allow us to do in this version 31 release is now we can take advantage of multi-monitor support. So with this release, we've introduced the ability to drag windows, take advantage of all of those monitors when you're sitting at your desk working, being able to create tab groups, trends on one, tags on the other, code on one, different ways to break it apart and do parallel troubleshooting. So these are some of the new productivity improvements you'll see in version 31. It's available today. I encourage you to get to the sessions, get your hands on the labs, and check that out. Another item we spent a lot of time on was better error indication, more quickly driving you to where the problems are at as you're building and debugging your code. We've spent time here building out better error indication so you can see exactly the rung, the spotted function block, the exact step in SFC to know where there's something that won't compile and drive you to that information a bit faster, more visual indication. Excuse me. We also spent time in the error windows, better filtering, better indication. So now you can filter based on warnings and errors and more quickly see exactly what's going on in those cases. Historically, you had one big list of all the different things throughout that line. It could be hundreds or thousands of lines long. Now you can filter specifically on errors and warnings to quickly give you that indication. The next major item we did in this release was we took a step back around the programming environment itself. And one of the things we heard loud and clear from all of you was around contemporary programming, the continued evolution of use of structured text from a computer science approach, being able to have a better structured text editor, being able to introduce things, simple things like line numbers, auto syntax, bookmarks, code snippets. This is a brand new structured text editor with amazing new capabilities built right in. One of the hallmarks of this is we spent a lot of time usability-wise on inline data values. Being able to show the tag values right in your code, so as you're building, troubleshooting, and maintaining, you can turn those data values on and off right in your code for that piece. Those are things that are going to be available in the labs. I'd encourage you to stop by. Next is the function block editor. We did some things to improve some of the online capabilities, sheet size, updates to some of the routing algorithms to improve how that layout is done within that function block editor. Better visual indication, access to tag values directly from that sheet so you don't have to bounce out to the tag editor and make those value changes right in line with the system. As you noticed, may have heard this morning in the keynote with Ted Hill and the Rage energy drink demonstration, Julie demonstrated this new Logix tag-based alarm capability. This is a new capability where we simplified alarming in the Logix controller. We've added a new type of alarm called a Logix tag-based alarm. This alarm allows you to simply click on any tag in the controller, make it an alarm, give it a name, configure it, and that tag will monitor in the background. It doesn't impact the memory size or the execution of your controller. Now, we're still maintaining the instruction-based alarms. There's many applications where you want to process that alarm right in line of code, right when it happens. These process in the background within that scan cycle, propagates that right out to the panel views and to the factory clock alarm system. Now, another cool part of this is that we can put these on structures. You can put them in AOIs, UDTs. So if you create a data structure, anytime you create a tag of that structure, that alarm comes right along. You don't have to worry about setting it up each and every time. It's just part of that object. So that's a real productivity savings. Those will also be demonstrated in many of the labs and sessions later this week. With version 31 release, this was the introduction of our 5580 safety controllers, both SIL 2 and SIL 3 safety controllers. And with that, an introduction of several new advanced safety instructions that will be available with the Kinetics 5700 drives and the new 5580 guard logic safety controllers. Things like safe feedback, safe stops, safe operating, all of those different instructions are now natively right in that controller. So if you're building in safety applications, I'd encourage you to check this out, take advantage of those right away in new designs. We've expanded the motion capabilities and instructions, added several new kinematics instructions, a motion coordinated transform, quite a few different things to get after different types of motion, different number of coordinated elements within that for the motion subsystem. So once again, if you're building complex systems with motion, these are now available for you to use natively within the system. As the world and sustainability continues to be such an important part of that, we hear loud and clear around giving better visibility, better information around energy consumption and energy usage within those systems. So we've adopted the ODBA SIP energy object within the logic controller in version 31. You can now, from an electrical object, you can have that structure to pull the energy usage data directly from those drives and from those devices, so you have access to that right in the controller without having to write extra code to go query and grab that data. Now, what you do with that data, it's really up to you, right? You can improve operation, you can report that up in dashboarding. The important thing is right there at your hands and right at your fingertips within the Logic's tag structure with that. Question?
And does that mean that you have new add-on profiles in for those devices that would then have the SIP energy tags in them?
Yes, the question was, is that part of the profile for the objects that have those devices? So it is. It's part of the definition of those objects that support that SIP energy object. As long as that device supports that SIP energy object, it's part of that data that comes back, you'll have that.
So if do the drives have it now, or is that future they're getting it soon?
Several of the drives have those today. So yeah, I would encourage you to go through some of the sessions with the drives and go through kind of all of the families that have that object just part of its core, for sure.
E3s or?
Yeah, I don't know the exact list of the devices, so I would, if you want, maybe after we talk, and I can get you contacts and you can go do that. Good question. Okay. All right. Continuing on, the topic around security. How many of you security is a topic that comes up in many, many conversations? See some head nods? Yeah? How many of you would just wish the topic of security was not as complex or as prevalent as it was today? That's great. As we talked about in the keynote this morning, security is here to stay. We're all doing things to mitigate risk, improve the integrity of those systems. When it comes to in the Rockwell automation system, it's around defense and depth, different layers of security, different types of protection. When we look at the core of the product, each new release, we're putting in things to harden that product, protect the integrity of that software, to make sure that what you're doing is what's happening within that system. For the things you're building, it's also important to understand the different levels of property protection. There's levels where you're just wanting to apply simple password protection. You just want to keep the honest. You want to potentially lock something down for unintended changes. It might be that you want to put user access controls on that system, using factory talk security, being able to put rights and user groups on who can do what functions within the system. It may then go all the way to the right hand of this slide, which is around critical protection of intellectual property. If you have an algorithm, if you have a function that is just core to your existence, and you want to protect that intellectual property, new capabilities and logics have been built in to provide that functionality. We now have a capability from a license-based source protection. Allows you to apply both IP encryption on the source of the code, as well as validate its integrity at execution, so that that object can only run in one controller that you've licensed to run. So it gives you new capabilities to protect your IP, and then protect where it runs within that system. So if you have more interest in that, we have several security sessions this week where you can definitely learn more. Now switching here to the Connected Components Workbench. A core part of the integrated architecture, the overall capabilities from Rockwell, is around supporting for the MicroLogix family of controllers. The new version 11 of Connected Component Workbench is now available, and it introduces support for some of the new MicroLogix 870 controllers, and it brings in kind of an expanded size and memory for a piece of it. A couple of the other software functions that are added in here is it now supports the common installation as Studio 5000 does. That more streamlined installation makes it much easier to set up, configure, and install. And the next item here I want to cover is some of the new capabilities which are very exciting for us. What we've done is in the Connected Component Workbench, we've now added a layer over top of the ladder editor that lets you write within the Logix constructs. If you're familiar with the ladder logic constructs, you can now program that way within the Connected Component Workbench. You can now copy and paste between Logix Designer and Connected Component Workbench, and it'll transfer that in those instruction sets that you might be most familiar with. So that's a layer that you can turn on and build that out just like the Logix instructions. If you want to use the normal ASCII structure, still there, absolutely, that's not going away, that's going on, but if you're trying to align with a Logix look and feel, you can now do that directly within the Connected Component Workbench. All right, moving right along, out of control to visualization. Being able to talk about integrated visualization within Studio 5000. So within that, we have the Studio 5000 View Designer product, which is supporting our Panel View 5000 line of panels. In the most current release, we continue to build out that set of functionality to be able to support the 5300 panel view for smaller applications. Being able to now do native data logging and trending within those panels. Being able to trend several tags down to a 500 millisecond resolution directly from that panel. Being able to set that up very easily within the trends on that panel itself. We've added in an emulator for that panel. Being able to build your screens and then test run that without actually having that physical panel to download that project to. Very, very helpful to speed that design, improve out those errors, and improve that process overall. So those are 3 of the new items that are in that release that just came out here in February. 3 more. We've added in support for standard PDF viewer. I know many of you were waiting on that from previous releases. That's now been added in to be able to bring some of those documents straight to that operator on the plant floor. We support VNC, so you can do that remote connection in, view what's going on within that panel from a remote location. Makes troubleshooting, view of that process a bit easier from a remote location. We've also, in a simplification for maintenance and other loading of the application, now have the ability to just plug in that drive, move that project file from that device right into that panel. So you don't have to have the software and go through an elaborate process to download that into that particular system. Continuing on with those, a lot of new features, a lot of new capabilities you're going to see in the Panel View 5000 line release over release, and that's going to continue to build out as we move on with that product.
Andy,
Yes.
just out of curiosity, in the Penalty 5000, is there plans at all to where it does VNC support currently right now? So VNC will allow it to participate in it and manage your application. But is there plans for us to move forward with the Panel 5000 as a Fin Manager client?
Yeah, so the question is there plans to move on with the panel view as a Fin Manager client? I think what you're going to see over the course of that roadmap is quite a bit of evolution where you have the thin clients, the panels, and the PCs all play together very nicely in that overall strategy, right? And really it's about scalable architecture. It's around giving you the option, what architecture best fits your needs. Sometimes it's a thin client, sometimes it's a panel, other times it's a full distributed PC. Being able to manage that across that Fin Manager approach will be very important to that over time. All right, next topic is library management. As we think about building a system, one of the best ways to get productivity is to take that really good content that you've built, make it a reusable library object, and then pass that around, reuse it, and share it. So library management is a core part of Studio 5000. The core product in doing that is with Studio 5000 Application Code Manager. If you haven't seen that tool, I would encourage you to stop by some of the sessions this week and the overview or the hands-on demonstration to learn a bit more about what it is it does and how it might be able to help you specifically. The overall premise for this is that you're going to design content, whether it's content from Rockwell Automation or content that you've built up over the past 20 years. We want to be able to create library objects, version manage it, publish it to a centralized repository, and then be able to have multiple people building projects pull from that content. Now there's a life cycle there. Changes are happening all the time. How do you continue to make different revisions of those libraries? How do you publish those? Control who has access to those. And then how do you update projects and use those over time? That tool set, as I mentioned, is Application Code Manager. There's been a lot of new features added in this past year that make that full life cycle of complex library management more possible. Some of the key things that we've introduced in this release, I'll start with not so much a functional addition, but a commercial one. We've made a licensing change, a commercial licensing change within Application Code Manager. Over the past year, we've now made the Light Edition a no-charge offering, so you can get your hands on it. You can use it to build projects, single user, local repository code. Take advantage of those features. It's part of something you have access to as a Rockwell customer to be able to do that. Along with that comes the libraries from Rockwell Automation. As you scale up, get to bigger systems, start to collaboratively work, then you move into a subscription model for that tool, but the value is there where it's an easy justification once you're building out libraries for sure. Now, functionally, some of the new things we've added, being able to create much more complex library objects, add those objects into existing projects, update those objects in existing projects. We've added a pretty sophisticated layer of linkages in those libraries. Let's face it, one piece of code is nice, but the real value comes when you can have more complex objects that are built up from other library objects. And when you do that, you really want to manage those all separately. You want to version manage the parts. You want to link them together. You can now do that very easily within Application Code Manager. We've also added in a new command line interface. Many of our customers are using this tool to do some automated testing, being able to take library objects, instantiate it, using this interface, and then run some tests on it. That's an important part of proving out that changes you make aren't causing problems in the code base that you have. So it's there, the platform is there to allow you to grow on over time. With Application Code Manager, if you're not familiar, it comes standard with two sets of library code. As I mentioned, you can use Rockwell libraries or your own code libraries. It includes the Plant PAX library of process objects. It also includes the brand new Machine Builder library. Hundreds of objects focused around motion applications and all the various axis coordination and motion components that you may need in an application. There's several sessions this week where you can actually get your hands on all those library objects, see what they are, how they work, how they might apply to your business. If nothing else, take home a really good set of best practices on how you can use those concepts to improve your library that you're building and have been using within your facilities. Now, many other types of items here are available, and I want to run through a set of those here as we go. The next set, some of them listed here for other sessions, include communication software with Pakatok links, the brand new Control Flash Plus software, and the new Pakatok Network Manager software. All of these were talked about in the opening today in the Rage Plant Enterprise, and how those can be used to really simplify some of the main support of those systems. So I wanted to run through those as an overview. The first is around Pakatok links. With the release here in February, we did a bit of rebranding, so this is kind of an awareness message. Many of you have been using RS Links Classic for many, many years, and if you're using our Pakatok product suite, you've been using RS Links Enterprise. Starting with this release, we've done a rebranding of RS Links Enterprise to Pakatok Links. Pakatok Links is the name of our communication software. We're going to build on top of that with different components going forward. So not to confuse you, it's not a new product. It's an evolution of RS Links Enterprise, but it is setting the stage for some of the new capabilities, which I'll talk about next, that are in the product with this most current release. So takeaway from Links Enterprise just became Pakatok Links, and that will continue to grow over time. We also did some rebranding of our Pakatok Gateway product. Gateway today is one of those terms that gets used in many, many new ways than what it was several years ago. The idea of having a cloud gateway. Gateways move data from one place to another. Pakatok Gateway was the software package that moved data from the control system out to third-party software packages. We've rebranded that along the Pakatok Links line. So it is now Pakatok Links Gateway. It's the software package that moves data from the Rockwell system out to third-party software tools. Now, an important part of this addition is we've introduced OPC UA capability into Pakatok Links, starting in this most current release. When you install Rockwell products, and you by nature install Pakatok Links, you will have OPC UA client capabilities just native as part of the system. What that means by just using Rockwell Pakatok products is you'll now have the ability to go out and grab data from third-party OPC UA servers and bring it into that architecture. That's just naturally part of what you have with that product. Now, if you want to set up Rockwell Automation as a data node in the Connected Enterprise, you'll want to add on the Pakatok Links Gateway product. That is what establishes the Rockwell system as an OPC UA server. That allows third-party systems to come in and grab data out of the Rockwell system. So it's a pretty simple process, concept. You just have to think about it. At Rockwell, you're going to go out and grab something, you've got it. If you're setting it up to reach into Rockwell and pull data out, that's the Pakatok Links Gateway product. Now with that evolution and the Pakatok Links name change, one of the things you're going to see in version 31 is we've now had Logix Designer adopt Pakatok Links. The default setting is still RS Links Classic, but there is the option to change that to Pakatok Links. Over the next couple of releases, you're going to see that invert. You're going to see it naturally using Pakatok Links. Better performance, more throughput and capabilities with that connection. That there has quite that release of our Pakatok Links in Logix Designer has a new user interface that's naturally part of Logix Designer. So you can drill in to set up the shortcuts, you can pin certain levels, a brand new, more usable way to browse the controller, find those data sources to connect into that controller. So if you're a power user of Logix Designer, I would encourage you to go through and check that out and explore that. Start to get familiar with that new capability within Logix. They also have that set up in some of the labs so you can easily do the change and check that out. One of the new releases we're very, very excited about is the evolution of our Control Flash product. Control Flash has been the software product that allows you to update the firmware in your Rockwell devices. It's been around from the beginning to be able to flash those hardware devices. What we've done just recently is we've introduced the Control Flash Plus product. It's a new product. It works along with Control Flash, but this was a ground-up development with usability and productivity in mind. What we spent time on is allowing you to be able to have the interface that can easily browse and find those devices, be able to understand what versions of firmware you have on your box, being able to flash multiple devices at one time, being able to set up a preferred version of firmware, almost kit up the versions you prefer, to be able to download those to make it easier for your teams. We know there's a lot of variations of firmware. One of the keys to our architecture is that piece of hardware can keep going forward with new capability and new firmware. So Control Flash Plus is that new interface that allows you to manage that more easily. Later this year, we're going to release the second iteration of that, and that will now provide a direct connection to our product compatibility and download center. So the idea here is that when you have Control Flash Plus installed in your box, and you have a connection to the Rockwell Download Center, it will tell you lifecycle status. It'll give you access to the latest versions of firmware so that you can download it directly from that tool rather than going to the website, searching out the firmware you want, and then you putting it on your box. So closing that link, making it much easier to get what you need when you need it. Okay? Sub question?
Hi, Andy. Does it have integration into Asset Center? The inventory agent?
Yeah, so the question was, is that integration with Asset Center? The first integration you're going to see, and they shared it on the stage this morning, was the life cycle status information. Both Control Flash Plus and Asset Center are now making that secure connection to the compatibility download site. And over time, you'll see those come together a bit more around the life cycle and the browsing, the topology, and all the devices that are there. Okay? So the first step for us was we have the ability to now just simplify that flashing, that life cycle right in that tool that you're using to update those devices.
Am I going to need an internet connection in order to flash my devices?
You will not need an internet connection to flash your devices. If you have a box, which is very common, that's not connected, you can go download the firmware kits that are available, add those to the disconnected box through whatever means you have to get files on there, and then you can do your flash of the device. So it does not require an internet connection, but if you have a structure set up where you can pull it right into that box. Good question, too. Okay. All right. Next up on this list is FactoryTalk Network Manager. This is a brand new product that's been brought to market by Rockwell in conjunction with Cisco. It's a partner product. We're working together to jointly pull this together, and it's focused around network topology, network management, and configuration. This is what was shown on some of the stage keynote this morning with that topology view and configuration. We have several sessions on that this week. If you are interested in more information about that configuration, topology, and managing that, please attend one of those. We're excited about this new product. I think it's going to bring a lot of value to your plant floor teams to be able to discover what's on that network, being able to configure those devices, manage and pull all the alarms and the errors and things that are happening on the plant floor directly into a tool that has been built specifically for that OT person, for that plant floor person, rather than an IT tool set that they may not be as comfortable with. Now, this can work in conjunction with all of your existing IT tool sets. It's not to change that, but it's a tool built specifically in that OT space. You're going to see quite a bit of new functionality coming out release over release with this product. Being able to browse across the networks, drop through the backplane, and do a lot of the hops that go along with what is an integrated architecture configuration. So I would encourage you to learn more on this, see where it may apply for that particular.
Can you tie that to FactoryTalk alarms and events?
The question was, can you tie that to FactoryTalk alarms and events? Today, directly, no. The factory talk alarms and events are originating out of that controller. This is a service that's running and monitoring that network separately. But it's a good question, potentially how we might look at doing that in the future. All right, and last but not least here, before we wrap up, I always like to mention and re-mention the Logix Compare and Merge utility. This is something that becomes an integral part of any multi-team collaboration as you're building Logix code. Several years ago, we moved it from being just a comparison tool to being a code compare and merge utility. And it's been getting quite a bit of new functionality year over year. The good thing about this tool is it works for all the versions of Logix. It's not just the most current. So even if you're in a facility where maybe you're standardized in version 20 or something of that nature, I would encourage you to check out the compare and merge tool. Being able to do a three-way compare and merge, being able to compare AOI UT definitions against the master set, as well in the latest release around application code manager. So if you've built up libraries of code in application code manager, and you want to compare those library definitions that you've created against things that are deployed in those particular controllers, you can now use the compare and merge tool to actually compare it against your saved libraries. So you can understand what's been happening or changing with those deployed systems for that. All right, I think what else would compare and merge? I think that's the main thing. There's a few other things that are in there, but it's a great tool. If you haven't used it, if you have multiple people working on a project, be sure to check it out. It helps across all those different versions. All right, with that, that's the update. Any set of questions that we can grab, and also online if there's any questions that are coming in from the audience on the live feed.
Is the feature pack for CCW, is that released at this point?
In 2 months' time.
So the question was the feature pack for Connected Component Workbench with the Logix add-on component will be released in approximately 2 months.
So the Studio 5000 and the Factory Talk appear to be built off of Visual Studio. Is there any way to access the back end of Visual Studio to integrate like C# tools and things in that are not part of Factory Talk?
So the question was, it appears that Logix Designer and the other tools are built off Microsoft Visual Studio. While that is the case, there are no hooks into the back end of Visual Studio to be able to do that extension. It's within the shell of Visual Studio from that environment.
Are there any plans to do that so we can get Visual Studio tools and libraries and things into our Factory Talk?
Yeah, so in the future, as we look to how do you make it more extendable, to be able to do that for sure. I don't have a roadmap of when that extensibility would be part of the release.
The latest version of Studio 5000, version 31, does that work on L7 controllers?
Yes, version 31 works for the 5570, 5370 controllers, as well as the 555380 controller family. Yes.
The firmware's out for all those.
Yes, the firmware is out for all of those. We had a staggered release on the firmware, but the firmware is all available at release for version 31. Yes. All right, Tanya, anything online coming in?
We have one question regarding training opportunities. If there are any, or where they can get further information about that.
Okay, yeah, so from Rockwell Automation, we have a pretty comprehensive set of training. For training sessions, we have a training department. You can set up custom training classes or some of the standard Logix or Vue training classes. If there's interest in other more focused training, I would encourage you to reach out to your local sales engineer or your local solution architect, and I'm sure they can help arrange something for training specific to the capabilities.
Thank you.
Clarity. You're saying that the version 31 on L7 controller would not support the tag-based alarm.
So the question was around support for tag-based alarms. Yes, the tag-based alarms are supported only in the 5380, 5580 family of controllers. That's right. As also are the new advanced safety instructions and the advanced motion instructions. Those are part of the 5380, 5580 family of controllers. Question over on the side?
So all these features that make development easier, do you plan to allow the newer versions of Studio to connect to controllers with older firmware? Is that ever something that's going to happen, or do you have to have the controllers with the new firmware?
So today, the structure is that we have the software and the firmware that are kind of in lockstep, and as you move to the next version of firmware, you put the next version of software on that. A lot of discussion about how do you change that model, how do you have a common version of software work with older versions of firmware. No definitive plans on that, but that is a very common request that we get.
So we're talking about LA control artists, not previous, right?
So the version 31 supports both the 53, or the 7 family and 8 family of controllers. Certain feature sets will only be targeted to the 8 family of controllers. That's correct. But you can still build a version 31 project. Certain features will only be targeted to the 5380 or 5580.
With factory holdings gateway, I don't need any more kept server enterprise?
So kept server remains a core part of our architecture. With kept server, we're focused around using that to interconnect across other protocols. So if you're going to a third-party DCS system and there's a specific protocol of communication, then you would leverage the keptware server software. If you're producing data or consuming data over OPC UA specifically, that would be where you would use the Pakatok gateway.
Will I ever be able to use like 5370 series processors with Studio or with Logix 5000 software? You know, kind of the other way around.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Will we ever be able to use 5380 series hardware with Logix 5000 software? So like version 20.
Okay, I understand the question. Yeah, so we did a branding change. Version 20 was branded RS Logix 5000, and that supported our 6 family and 7 family of controllers. Then starting in version 21 was starting with the 7 family of controllers going forward. So right now there was no plans in the Studio 5000 current versions of Logix Designer to support the L6 family of controllers back.
Okay.
Or the 3 equivalent, the 5370, or sorry, 5360.
Oh, yeah,
Compact.
that's L32E.
The 32s, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Anything else on mine? No?
Nothing else on mine.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope this was a good overview. You can take some of this and survey the other sessions being offered and learn a bit more about those things